It is Parents' Day tomorrow in Korea, and the day after tomorrow is the presidential election day for South Koreans. For those of you who are able to vote, are you ready to vote? What do you think makes a great president, king, or a leader? Now, I would like to share with you qualities of good political leaders, and this is not necessarily a Christian survey. For many, deciding which candidate to vote into office is a matter of party affiliation. Others, however, cast their votes based on the specific characteristics they look for in their candidate of choice. So what are the qualities or characteristics good political leaders should possess? Here are the top 5 qualities of some of the world's most successful political leaders. And number 1 is honesty. Being honest can sometimes be difficult because it makes individuals vulnerable. It reveals who we really are and discloses our mistakes, which gives others the opportunity to criticize or reject openly. Honesty develops character and builds credibility and trust, which are the foundation to evoke confidence and respect from those around you. In the case of political leaders, that is teammates and constituents. And the second quality is compassion. Compassion is the humane quality of understanding the suffering of others and wanting to do something to alleviate that suffering. While many see compassion as a weakness, true compassion is a character that converts knowledge to wisdom. Good political leaders use compassion to see the needs of those he leads and to determine the course of action that would be of greatest benefit. And third is confidence. Having confidence in a political leader is about having faith or belief that he will act in a right, proper, or effective way. A good political leader needs to be both confident in himself or herself, as well in their ability to lead. Leaders who possess this quality inspire others, drawing on a level of trust which sparks the motivation to get others on board and get the job done. And fourth factor is flexibility. Flexibility for a political leader is about understanding the give and take aspects of politics and the ability to find the common ground. Good politicians listen carefully to all sides, to not only hear their arguments, but to especially learn what it would take on behalf of all parties involved to reach a consensus. This characteristic allows political leaders to recognize setbacks and criticism, to learn from them, and move forward. And last, quality, remember this is not a Christian survey, is integrity. The word integrity is defined as the adherence to moral and ethical principles, the soundness of moral character. It is a synonym for honesty and uprightness, and is a vital characteristic for those in political leadership. Political leaders who possess integrity can be trusted because he never veers from inner values, even when it might benefit them to do so. A leader must have the trust of followers. This requires the highest standard of integrity. Our text today is taken from a portion of 2 Samuel 23, when David, before becoming king, being encamped against the Philistine army, found himself in the cave of Adullam. Verse 15 says, David said longingly, "Oh, that someone would give me water to drink from the well of Bethlehem that is by the gate." Then the 3 warriors broke from the camp of the Philistines, drew water from the well of Bethlehem that was by the gate, and brought it to David. But he would not drink of it. He poured it out to the Lord, for he said, "The Lord forbid that I should do this. Can I drink the blood of the men who went at the risk of their lives?" Therefore he would not drink it. The 3 warriors did these things. While I was studying the leadership of David, I was very impressed with this passage. What a beautiful way to show loyalty and integrity of not only David, but his men. Not 1, but 3 who love him as their leader. David was not even king yet. In fact, he was quite far from it then. The 3 warriors did not do this out of bribery. The amazing thing in this episode is that his 3 mighty warriors that were probably close to him for protection, kind of like bodyguards, heard David's whisper. And to them, it was a desire, a longing uttered by their leader. The next thing we see, they act on this dream of David, of wanting some water. The 3 mighty men took him at his word, and breaking through the host of the Philistines, brought the water to David. It was a singular proof of his great personal influence. The key to successful leadership today is influence, not authority. David was so honored that to gratify his wish, the men risked their lives in getting him some water to drink. They had to draw it from a well while the enemy was all around them. It was about 20 kilometers one way they had to travel for the water, from the cave to Bethlehem. 40 kilometers both ways, to and from the well, just to get some water. And you know, a marathon is about 42 kilometers of distance. The crux of this story in Samuel is simply this. David's followers did not stop at anything to see their leader's wish and vision fulfilled. They were dedicated to the point of laying down their lives for their leader. They did not have to fetch any water. They wanted to. The water was a symbol of their devotion, loyalty, and camaraderie to their leader and one another. And what do we find the great leader David doing on their return with the water? He refuses to drink it, although he was very, very thirsty. That is a leader of leaders. He could not get himself to drink something that cost the blood of his faithful followers. Water at such a cost was sacred in his eyes. It was something too holy for man to turn his use. So he poured it on the ground as an offering to the Lord, who is David's true commander-in-chief. That is sacrifice and worship pleasing to the Lord. I'm quite sure they all worshiped God at the site when the 3 warriors returned with water. After looking at David's life, I noticed several ways in which his story shows us what we need in our generation to be God's kind of leader. a man after God's own heart. You would agree that King David had a lot of burdens in his life, yet he managed to handle all of this and still be a good leader, for he knew his God and he was anointed for the task of leadership. Nowadays, leaders do not get anointed, but we should actively vote for them in the form of democracy. And what are the qualities of David after God's own heart? First, David had patience. You know that when David was anointed as Israel's king, he was a boy, probably in his early teens, but he was 30 years old before becoming king of Judah, which was just a part of Israel, and 37 before he was named king of all Israel, as promised. Having to wait a couple of decades for something you have been promised that's rightfully yours is hard enough. But the existing king, Saul, spent a fair portion of that time trying to kill David. This forced him to stay on the run, hiding in caves, and fleeing to another country. At least twice, David had a clear opportunity to kill Saul. And considering the circumstances, it could have been considered self-defense. But David didn't. He knew that God was in control and waited on his timing. David cries in Psalm 27, "Wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord." Number two, David had courage. When Goliath came out to challenge the army of Israel, everyone was afraid of the 9-foot giant. Besides being king, Saul was a head taller than any other Israelite. So when the giant Goliath came out to challenge the army of Israel, I'm sure people were looking to Saul to do something for them instead. How did Saul react? Saul was dismayed and terrified, just like everyone else. Then this child, David, ends up comforting the scared king, assuring Saul that he'd take care of it. And you probably know what happens next. David was brave because he knew who had his back. Though our giants might look different today, such as the nuclear weapons of North Korea, there is definitely still evil in the world that we need to stand up against. David sings in Psalm 27, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" And third, David had humility. One of my favorite verses in the Bible, in Psalms, is this. David asks God, "What is man that thou art mindful of him, and the son of man that thou dost care for him?" In Psalm 8:4. In meeting with his son, Absalom, the Bible tells us the king kissed Absalom in 2 Samuel 14. And that same son rebelled against David and tried to kill his own father for power. But when David was willing to humble himself, as he did by not letting his men sacrifice in his honor, the people loved David for these deeply human moments. When a leader seems overconfident, the slightest mistake is pounced on with glee. Genuine humility is not incompatible with a strong ego and self-confidence. As C.S. Lewis wrote, True humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. The next characteristic which is given, David had faith, of course. Throughout all these challenges, David showed that he had faith in God. He believed that God was in control. God had promised that David would be king, and since he wasn't king yet, that meant Saul couldn't kill him. It was the same with Goliath. Goliath couldn't kill him either. When others brought up doubts, David pointed to evidence of how God had taken care of him in the past. He trusted that God would continue to keep his promises. David confesses in Psalm 31, "But I trust in you, Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hands. Deliver me from the hands of my enemies, from those who pursue me." And last, but not the least, David had grace upon him. Perhaps the most surprising thing about David being a man after God's own heart is that he's just as well known for his mistakes as his successes. Why would God have anything to do with a lying, adulterous murderer? Really, it says more about God's character than David's. The one thing David did was recognize when he was wrong and repent. Being a good leader doesn't mean making the fewest mistakes. It means being open about them and being quick to ask forgiveness and get back on the right path. Many things have changed since the time of David. Languages, technology, culture, political life, but not human nature. We need our leaders to be smart, savvy, and strong, to be sure. But we also look to our leaders for transparency, integrity, and faith. Leadership is a potent combination of strategy and character. But if you must be without one, be without the strategy. By Norman Schwarzkopf, Jr., U.S. Army General. The Bible will not tell you who to vote for, but it will tell you what to look for. Men and women who incorporates the best in us as we vote, to help us be our best, even at bitter results, as responsible individuals and as a nation. Amen.